So that's the third part. Let's continue.
Okay, so I'm looking at this ship, and all of a sudden, the ship starts to, it looks like it's moving. I don't know if it's some sort of an optical illusion that it's moving, but it starts to disappear behind a line, almost like somebody sliced the sky, and this ship entered into a slice in the sky. That's what I interpreted.
Was it a little bit fuzzy, or it was just pure, straight, sharp edge?
Sharp edge.
Very straight?
Very straight.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. I kept blinking my eyes because I kept thinking that this was an illusion. And I kept, even seeing this, wide awake, looking at it, and knowing what I just experienced, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And eventually the ship was completely gone. And so I just shrugged and thought, okay, maybe this was just some strange, vivid dream. So I crawled back into bed. And the next morning, my mother announced to me that my grandmother, who lives right next door to us, and the woman across the street from her, stayed up quite a bit of the night watching the big UFO over our field where I saw it, obviously where I was taken aboard. And before that, I had mentioned to my mother that I had a strange dream and tried to tell her something about it, and we never talked about it after that. But one thing I did forget to say is when I was on the ship, they told me not to tell anybody what happened because they said, don't tell anyone about this because no one's going to believe you, and they will put you away. They'll think you're crazy. And so I lived with this secret most of my childhood. And they said they were, also they said they were coming back. They were definitely coming back. And there was a long period of time where I didn't remember the visits. But I do remember an incident that happened when I was very little that strikes me as odd, and I'd like to mention it. I was before I was in school, so I must have been 5 years old. And we lived in another area, in a secluded area. And my aunt was babysitting, and I had my two cousins with me who were outside playing with me. And this would look like a Goodyear blimp, but it didn't have the Goodyear printed, no print over it. Just a blimp-like object. It was so low over the house that you could see the divots or whatever they call it. It was gray. It was a funny gray color, metallic, and it was inches from the roof of the house. And my cousins looked up. It was enormous. They started screaming bloody murder, and they ran into the house to see their mother. And I don't know why, but I stayed outside, and I just kept looking up like this was the grandest thing I ever saw. I had no fear in me at all. And I remember watching this object move over the house and the trees and right over me. And then the next thing I remember is going away. And as I was watching it, it was actually brushing the tops of the trees. And I know that Goodyear blimps, any kind of blimp, they have those, I think they're called gondolas, or those things underneath them. This didn't have that. So then I thought, well, I better go into the house and scream too, because that's what my cousins did. And I remember running into the door, running into the house, and they almost looked frozen, like they weren't moving. And my aunt had the two of them wrapped in her arms, and then it seemed like then they just started moving again. So they were like still, and then they started moving. It was strange. I just dismissed it. I thought of it, as maybe a messed up memory or something. But my cousins do remember this. The blimp.
Was it a saucer this time?
No, it just looked just like a blimp. It was round, not round, but shaped just like a blimp.
How big was it?
Enormous. About the size of a football field.
Football field?
Yeah, it was huge.
Ah.
It was. It covered the house and the trees and everything. It was huge.
Ah.
So
how far was it?
How far up?
Yeah.
Well, we lived in a small, almost like a bungalow, and it had 2 stories, but it was a very small 2-story house, and it was just inches above the house. Inches. It looked like it was going to hit the roof. I was surprised it didn't.
Was there any structure to it?
It looked like panels put together. I don't remember the back of it, though. You know, the back of a blimp has that funny shape of it. Well, I just remembered that that blimpy type shape,
How about the sound? Any sound?
No sound at all, which is strange.
Did it dampen the sound of everything else? Did you hear other sounds?
Yeah.
Was there like wind or any other?
I could hear birds.
Effects, anything of that sort?
Magnetic. I at that age I wouldn't have noticed it because I didn't know anything about magnetism. But I do remember that I found it odd that I wasn't afraid. I was excited and happy. That doesn't make any sense.
So, has your mother been abducted ever?
My mother said when she was a young girl she had an experience that she wanted to say was religious.
Mm-hmm.
She was in a field and she was lifted up into the air. And the last time I got visited was at my mother's, and I don't remember the visit, but I do remember. But my mother remembers a bright orange light in her bedroom that woke her up, and it filled the bedroom, and she heard me downstairs talking to someone, and she figured it was them, and she got very scared. She was afraid to come downstairs, and when she came down, I met her at the bottom of the stairs, and this is what I remember. She said, "Did you see that light?" And I said, "Don't worry about it." I kept trying to tell her to go to bed. I remember at one point turning the light on in the hall and flicking it off, thinking that I hope I don't wake her. So I said, "No, I just flicked the hall light on. That's probably what it was." And I was blocking her from coming down the stairs. Why would I do that? And she wanted to get past me, and she was nervous. And I was just very calm and monotone voice telling her to go back to bed. Everything was fine. Mm-hmm. And she got suspicious of that, and she went into the kitchen. And I just went into my room where I was sleeping, which was downstairs. And then she went back up to bed. And I remember thinking, what just happened? And I didn't even know why I was up. I lost quite a bit of time because I went to bed at 11:30. The next thing I know, it seemed like only a few minutes passed, and it was 3, and then a few minutes more passed, and then it was 5 in the morning, and I was angry because I didn't get any sleep that night.
We'll make a break here.